What if science could finally shine a light on one of the most sensitive questions about the human mind? When people drink ayahuasca, sit with sacred cacti, enter mushroom ceremonies, work with Jurema, Iboga, or other plants of power, what do you think is really happening there? Is it chemistry? Is it belief? Is it culture? Is it the brain producing images? Or is there something about these experiences that science can measure from the outside, but still cannot fully enter from within? This is where the subject becomes difficult, because the language we use already chooses a side before the conversation even begins. Medicine often calls these substances hallucinogens. In one sense, that makes sense. It is a practical word for classification. It tells doctors, researchers, and institutions that these compounds can alter perception, emotion, memory, and the sense of self. But the word also carries a hidden judgment. A hallucination sounds like an error, a false image, a malfunction, something unreal appearing where reality should be. And that is not how many traditional cultures understand these experiences. In those worlds, these plants are not described as recreational distortions. They are medicines, sacraments, teachers, plants of power. Some researchers and writers have used the word entheogen, meaning something that can awaken an experience of the sacred from within. Neither word is perfect, but the distance between them reveals the whole problem. One word describes what the experience looks like from the outside. The other tries to describe what it can feel like from the inside. And maybe that is the real subject here. Not just plants, not just drugs, not just rituals, but the gap between observing consciousness and entering it. Because from the outside, a ceremony can look strange. A dark room, people sitting in silence, someone singing, someone crying, someone vomiting into a bucket, someone shaking, someone staring into space as if they are watching a movie no one else can see. To a cold observer, it can look irrational. But from the inside, people often report something very different. They describe memories rising with impossible force, patterns becoming visible, a childhood wound appearing not as an idea, but as a living presence, a fear that was hidden for years suddenly standing in the center of the room. And this is where science begins to face its own limit. Science can measure brain activity. It can track heart rate, blood chemistry, behavior, depression scores, addiction outcomes, and long-term changes in personality or well-being. That matters. Without that kind of measurement, any powerful experience can be romanticized, exaggerated, or exploited. But science cannot directly feel what it is like to be inside the vision. It cannot become the person who suddenly sees their own life from an angle they never had before. It can record the report, it can compare the data, it can study the molecule, but the most important part of the experience may happen in the one place no scanner can fully enter, the private theater of consciousness. This does not mean the experience is automatically true. That would be too easy. A person can feel something with overwhelming intensity and still misunderstand it. A vision can be meaningful without being literal. A message can feel sacred and still be shaped by memory, fear, expectation, music, culture, trauma, and suggestion. Intensity is not the same thing as wisdom, but the opposite mistake is also too easy. Just because something cannot be fully measured from the outside does not mean it is meaningless. Think about a dream that changed the way you felt about someone, a conversation that stayed in your body for years, a song that brought back a version of you that you thought had disappeared. None of these things are easy to prove from the outside, but they can change real decisions, real relationships, real lives. So maybe the question is not simply whether the visions are real. Maybe the deeper question is why some experiences, even when impossible to prove externally, can reorganize a person internally. This is why plants of power have always made modern culture uncomfortable. They do not fit neatly into one box. Ayahuasca is chemistry, but it is not only chemistry. It is also vine, leaf, song, purging, community, fear, memory, interpretation, and integration. Jurema is not only a plant associated with altered states, it is also territory, tradition, secrecy, ancestry, and Brazilian spiritual history. Sacred cacti such as peyote and San Pedro are not only carriers of mescaline, they belong to desert landscapes, long ceremonies, endurance, prayer, and time. Mushrooms have become one of the most studied doors into psychedelic science. Yet outside the laboratory, they often come wrapped in ancient ritual, modern experimentation, or personal mythology. Iboga carries another kind of gravity. It has been discussed in relation to addiction, and deep psychological confrontation, but it also carries serious physical risks. It is not gentle just because it is natural. Natural things can heal, poison, confuse, or destroy. Argyrea nervosa, often known through its seeds, shows another problem of the modern world. When a plant is separated from a stable ritual tradition, what remains may be only the compound, the curiosity, and the risk. Even cacao ceremonies complicate the category. Cacao is not a classic psychedelic in the same way, but people still gather around it for opening, connection, emotion, and presence. It shows that a ritual does not have to tear reality apart to become meaningful. Sometimes it simply makes the body feel safe enough to speak. And then there are practices like kambo, which are often placed near plant medicine culture, even though kambo is not a plant and not psychedelic. It is a secretion from a frog used in intense physical rituals. It reminds us that not every traditional practice belongs in the same category, and not every powerful experience should be romanticized. Power requires discernment. This is where the middle of the story turns. Because the modern debate usually asks, are these experiences spiritual or are they just brain chemistry? But that may be the wrong frame. Every experience you have is brain chemistry. Love is brain chemistry. Grief is brain chemistry. Music, prayer, shame, awe, memory, and beauty all move through the body. Calling something brain chemistry does not make it fake. It only tells us the doorway through which it enters human life. The real question is what the chemistry does to meaning. Some scientific models suggest that classic psychedelics may temporarily loosen rigid patterns in the brain. One way to understand this is that the mind normally runs on predictions. It does not simply receive reality, it edits reality before you ever notice. It filters what matters, what threatens you, what you expect from people, what kind of person you think you are. Most of the time, this is useful. You could not function if every sensation arrived with equal importance. But sometimes the filter becomes a prison. A person may know intellectually that they are safe, but still live as if danger is everywhere. They may know a relationship is over, but still feel chained to it. They may understand their own self-sabotage, explain it perfectly, even laugh about it, and still repeat it the next morning. This is the strange weakness of insight. You can know something and not be changed by it. Participants in plant rituals often describe a different kind of knowing. Not advice, not motivation, not an idea written on the surface of the mind. More like seeing the hidden mechanism directly. A person might describe seeing the fear behind their anger, the grief behind their control, the loneliness behind their performance, or the old wound behind a life that looked normal from the outside. Almost like a line of emotional code that had been running quietly for years suddenly appears on the screen. Before, they only felt the effects. After, they saw the structure. That does not mean the plant fixed them. It does not mean the vision was literally true. It does not mean the work is finished. But it may explain why people speak about these experiences differently from ordinary reflection. You can argue with advice. It is harder to argue with something you feel you have seen from the inside. But here is the uncomfortable reversal. The same power that can reveal can also deceive. If someone walks out of a ceremony convinced that every image was a command, every emotion was prophecy, and every fear was a message from the universe, the experience can become another prison, a mystical one. The person who rejects scientific arrogance can fall into spiritual arrogance. They stop questioning because the experience felt too deep to question. They confuse surrender with certainty. They mistake intensity for authority. And this is not only a problem inside ceremonies. We all do this. We treat our strongest feelings as evidence. We assume our pain is accurate because it is painful. We assume our intuition is wise because it arrives quickly. We assume our memories are honest because they feel familiar. Then we judge someone else for doing the same thing with different symbols. A scientist may reduce a ceremony to neurochemistry and miss the meaning. A believer may elevate a vision into absolute truth and miss the psychology. Both can become too certain from opposite sides of the same mystery. This is why Carlos Castaneda remains such a strange figure in this conversation. He entered the story as an anthropologist, writing books about his apprenticeship with Don Juan, a Yaqui figure in Mexico, and about plants, perception, discipline, and other ways of seeing. His work became famous, then deeply contested. Many critics questioned whether the events happened as he described them, and for good reason. So Castaneda should not be used as proof, but he is still useful as a symbol, because his story, whether read as anthropology, literature, myth, or something in between, captures the magnetism of this territory. The observer enters trying to categorize. The system he studies begins to transform him. The scientist approaches the ritual as an object, and the ritual refuses to remain an object. Something about that arc still matters. Not because it proves Don Juan, not because it settles the debate, but because it shows the central tension. Some things change when the observer is no longer outside the experiment. And maybe this is why the subject remains so sensitive. The scientific world needs distance. It needs control groups, skepticism, replication, and caution. That distance protects people from fraud, abuse, fantasy, and harm. But the ceremonial world often says distance is exactly what prevents understanding. You cannot fully know the ocean by testing a cup of salt water. At some point, it says, you have to enter. Both sides are right about something. Both sides are missing something. Plants of power sit at that border, where molecule becomes myth, where culture shapes chemistry, where the body becomes a doorway, and where meaning can heal or mislead depending on how it is held. Maybe the mature position is not to worship these experiences and not to dismiss them. Maybe it is to approach them with two kinds of humility. The humility of science, which says we must test, measure, doubt, and protect. And the humility of experience, which says not everything real to human life can be understood from a distance. Because perhaps these plants do not simply show another world. Perhaps at their most powerful and most dangerous, they reveal how much of this world was already being edited by the mind. And once someone sees that, even for a moment, the question changes. It is no longer only, what did the plant show them? It becomes, what have we all been seeing without realizing we were seeing through something? Lucid order. Question everything.